Good evening, everyone. I'm Police Commission President Steve Soboroff. I'm joined this evening by my fellow Police Commissioner and your neighbor, Sandra Figueroa Villa. We both want to thank you for coming this evening to this most important community meeting to us, to hear what qualities, characteristics, and competencies you would like to see in your next Chief of Police. Your Chief of Police for the past 8.5 years is Charlie Beck. He's announced his retirement after 42 years of distinguished service to the Los Angeles Police Department, and is over 7 years as our 8.5 years as our chief, and that is effective June 27th. We will appoint a new chief before that date, so we will not have an interim chief of police between Charlie Beck and the next chief. If we complete the process early, the new chief may start a month early. If we complete the process later, then Charlie Beck will stay. We are committed to not having an interim chief. Under the city charter, the general manager of the city personnel department, in conjunction with the Board of Police Commissioners, conducts the recruitment. Applications for the chief of police are submitted to the personnel department, who will forward the applications to the police commission. The most qualified candidates will be interviewed by the entire commission. The police commission then provides the mayor the names of three candidates, ranked by the commission in order. We recommend this person first, this person second, this person third. From those three, the mayor will select his appointee, whose name will be forwarded to the city council for confirmation. I can't tell you if the mayor will release the names of the three. We won't. Past mayors, some have, some haven't. No mayor has ever released the rankings, and we won't either. The Police Commission is holding 6 of these community input sessions in various areas of the city to hear from the community. This is the 5th of the 6, correct, Mr.
Yes,
Keybank? I ask you one favor, and then I'm going to turn this over to my fellow commissioner. When you speak, and there's a 2-minute time limit unless what you want to say takes 3 minutes, or if it takes 4 minutes, go ahead. We will ask you to stay on message. The purpose of this meeting is input on the chief of police. And so we ask you to stay to that message. What I ask you personally is, don't not come up to the microphone and then go away and saying, I wish I would have asked this, or I wish I would have asked that. This is no place to be shy. We want to hear from you. And so I would encourage you, please, and if you are a little microphone shy, I'll hang around. I'm sure Sandy will hang around afterwards. Come chat with us. Commissioner?
Thank you. Commissioner Soboroff. I just wanted to let you know that there's also, and for some of our police officers, I was at roll call at Northeast, 2 of them, and we want to hear from you too, as well as the public. So as I say this, you can go online and fill out our online survey that's available at www.lacity.org, www.per.lacity.org, and www.lapdonline.org. There are paper copies of the survey in the back of the room tonight that you can complete if you would like. You may also send your comments via email to percomments@lacity.org. The information will assist in the preparation of the recruitment brochure and our interview questions for the candidates. Commissioner Sobroff,
I am
Chief
not a kid.
Sobroff, already talked about the purpose of the meeting tonight, to see what you would like to see in your next chief of police. The last meeting I was at, there were public there advocating for certain people in the department to be the chief, and I asked them if they could, as they advocate for those people, that they also talk about what leadership qualities that they have that would make them a good chief. The only other thing I'd like to do is, since this is the only meeting that we're having in Central Bureau is my area. I live and work in Central Bureau. I wanted to ask my Deputy Chief Arcos to come up and say a few words. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Surprise.
Yeah, thanks for the surprise, Commissioner Figueroa Villa and Commissioner Sobroff and Mr. T-Fank. I just want to welcome you to Montecito Heights and to Hollenbeck area. I am Bob Arcos. I'm the Commanding Officer of Operations Central Bureau. I just want to thank the public, our community members who came out tonight and took time away from your families or things that you had going on tonight. It's a really important time in the history of our department, and the commissioners coming out and meeting with you says a lot about their commitment to the next chief of police and the selection. So we really encourage you to come to the mic and speak on what you think is important in the next chief of police. So again, my thanks to you for coming out here tonight, because I know you wouldn't be out here tonight if it didn't matter to you. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you for the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would also like to introduce Richard T-Fank, who's Executive Director of the Police Commission. I'd like to ask him to share with you some of his background and experience, and I think you'll see why we're pleased to have him with us generally and also especially this evening. Mr. T.
Thank you, Commissioner. He always does this to me. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Police Commissioners. I've been in that position for a little over 14 years as the Executive Director. I've served 21 different commissioners during that time, participated in
Who's your favorite two?
The two who are sitting here tonight. The process for the reappointment of Chief Bratton, and then the process for the selection of Chief Beck, and the process for the reappointment of Chief Beck. So I'm familiar with the processes that the commission will have to take part in, as Commissioner Sobroff outlined. A little bit about myself. I'm a former police officer. I retired in March of 2001 after a little over 32 years in law enforcement. I was a police chief in two cities. City of Pomona, I was police chief for 3.5 years, and I was police chief in the city of Buena Park in Orange County for 11.5 years. And when I retired, I went to work for the Attorney General, Bill Lockyer at the time, for 2.5 years prior to coming to work for the LAPD with the Board of Police Commissioners. And that's a little bit about my background. I would again just reinforce the survey online. As the commission indicated, that's very accessible. lacity.org, which is the City of Los Angeles website, or you can go to the Personnel Department website, which is per.lacity.org, or the LAPD website, lapdonline.org. If you go to any of those three websites, right on the front page of the website, about a 3-inch square with a badge, you click on that, it'll take you to the link to complete the survey. It'll take you about 5 minutes to do it. Or again, you can email comments to per@lacity.org. With that said, I'll conclude my comments, and thank you.
Last point before we start. This is not a box-checking exercise for the Police Commission. The results of the survey, the meetings, even if whether there's one person or 100 people, this is important for us. We take notes because, and I will tell you, I've probably, between the meetings and people that I've spoken with in groups and through private calls, it's probably been over 600 or 700 so far. I haven't spoken with anyone, and I've spoken with people who are very pro-police and people who are very against police. I've learned something from all of them. I've taken notes. I want to read you my notes that I took. I was at a charitable foundation, and they have 12 service caseworkers that are out in the field dealing with all the nonprofits that serve the underserved in the community. And I asked them, and I also asked the board members, so I asked the masses, and I asked the classes, you know, what do you think? And I want to read you some of, these were my notes. And this is, they don't all speak collectively, they speak as a individual. One said, you know, I want a person that doesn't sit in the car during the parade. I want a chief that gets out of the car and works the crowd. I want a chief that is perceived and known to us to be there for the people. I want a chief who's approachable, who builds trust everywhere. Builds trust with the communities. There's a lot of communities, a lot more communities than council districts. Builds trust with the department. There are a lot more people than command staff. There are rank and file. There are reserves. There are civilians. Builds trust, obviously, with the public, with the Police Protective League, etc. I want a chief, my writing is really sloppy, so. I want a chief who's a communicator. I want a chief that is compassionate to the underserved. I want a chief who has vision and ingenuity. I want a chief that's politically savvy. I want a chief that's media savvy. I want a chief that's technologically savvy. And I asked what they meant by that, and they said, not so much, you know, can tweet up a storm, but understands social media and how it's used for us, against us, and with us. I'm really proud that we're one of the only police departments in America that encourages all of our officers to communicate in social media. It's not like, okay, you gotta, you know, we've got a message and everybody's got to put it out. You've got to put it out through these 5 people. We have a couple thousand officers, I think, that have Twitter accounts. I want a chief that has a good perspective on the whole situation in Los Angeles. This was a good one. I want a chief that can say, I'm sorry, and I made a mistake. I want a chief that will agree or disagree with the mayor, with the commission, with the league, etc. See, I think there's one more. Oh. And I want a chief that surrounds himself or herself with implementers. Who's their team going to be? This is not a job for one person. This is a job. Making LA a safer place is for all of us. In uniform, out of uniform. It's not just for the chief. And so, who's he or she going to surround himself with? Those are my notes from that meeting. Just wanted to share them with you. So we will begin. You can just raise your hand if you didn't put it. Oh, we have some speaker cards, but if you don't have a speaker card in, feel free.
Okay, our first speaker is Mark Overstreet.
Welcome, Mark.
I'm Mark Overstreet. I'm from the University Hills next to Cal State Los Angeles. I'm on the CPAB for the Hollenbeck precinct, and I am one of the advocates of Neighborhood Watch in the Hollenbeck area. And first of all, I want to thank all the police officers and detectives that are here for the wonderful job that you do day after day, night after night. Thank you. And I thank you for having these meetings and letting us speak to you in person. Some of you I haven't met before. Sandra, I've known for some years. The survey was very good. It's like, I don't need to get up here and speak as after I answered all of the parts of your survey, it pretty much had it there. Few things. Yes, I'd like to have a chief who can make Los Angeles more safe and civil. I think that's foremost. I'd like to have a police chief who will continue to develop the culture of constitutional policing in regards to practices that respect civil liberties. I'd like us to be able to select a chief that is an advocate for fixing the deferred retirement option plan. I'm a retired school teacher, school counselor, and we get excellent retirement benefits, but it also costs an awful lot. And like with the police department, when I retired, they offered me to come back and work full time. But in the plan that you have right now, no offense to the policemen here, but they only have to be active one day and then they can take disability. And that's a big burden on the city. I'd like to see more police officers hired.
Keep going.
Okay, which
Okay,
is
stop.
the
Just
next one. I'd like to advocate for more police officers. There's a lot of great candidates, and I trust that you, the commissioners, will select the best 3 candidates regarding the issues of policing here in Los Angeles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Becca Channel.
Becca? Hi. Take your time. Thanks for coming.
Hi, thank you so much for providing this opportunity and this space for us to come speak with you. My name is Becca Channel, and I'm here representing an organization called the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking. And my role, or we're also known as CAST, that's what we're more commonly known as. My role at CAST is the task force coordinator, and I am actually housed in a co-located facility alongside the LA County Sheriff's Department and many of our other law enforcement partners, and we work together to coordinate the LA Regional Human Trafficking Task Force. I've had the privilege for the last 4 years of working with many of our law enforcement partners in the community, and that includes LAPD and the human trafficking units within the Detective Support Vice Division and also within the South Bureau stations. CAST actually has a very long history with LAPD. In 2007, we together created the very first human trafficking task force in LA, the LA Metro Human Trafficking Task Force, and coordinated that together until 2014. We really value our partnership with LAPD, and we really would love to see a continued prioritization of investigations into human trafficking cases, along with the amazing work that has already been done to investigate sex trafficking cases. We hope that the new chief will also prioritize investigation of labor trafficking cases. Under the LA Metro Human Trafficking Task Force, these labor trafficking cases were investigated through the Robbery Homicide Division and are no longer being investigated. So we really hope that human trafficking in general and labor trafficking continues to be a priority for the new chief. We also hope at CAST, since we are an organization that serves a large immigrant population, that the new chief will bring a continued commitment to not participating in immigration enforcement efforts.
Say your sentence again, because the bell.
Oh, sure. So because at CAST we serve a large immigrant population, we hope that the new chief brings a continued commitment to not participate in immigration enforcement efforts. We do at CAST, we employ a collaborative model, so we work very closely with our federal law enforcement partners and local, including FBI and Homeland Security investigations, and we do believe that our federal law enforcement partners bring really valuable resources to human trafficking investigations. However, we feel that this collaboration should be done in a way that does not result in detention or deportation of immigrants, especially potential human trafficking victims. In our experience, see that traffickers often use deportation as a threat against these victims, and that keeps them in their trafficking situation. And so we believe that if local law enforcement engages in these anti-immigration efforts, then this will be a further deterrence for victims to come forward and get the help that they need. So as an anti-trafficking organization, we are committed to a victim-centered and trauma-informed approach, and we look forward to working alongside the new chief in this way and to combat this issue and keep victims in our communities safe from this crime. So thank you.
Yeah, Becca, thank you for what you're doing.
Claudia Agras. I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
Hi, Claudia, welcome.
Hi, I didn't realize this was for the chief, but I just was thinking it was a neighborhood type of watch meeting. But in any case, I've been coming to the neighborhood, community meetings for the LAPD with John Pedrosa. Unfortunately, he's already retired. And all the points that you mentioned for the chief, that sounds like John Pedrosa to me. But anyways, I did want to mention that this is Yanis Truth, because I used to come to the neighborhood watch meetings with him, and actually Police Officer Fernell was my district for Lincoln Heights, and Pedrosa was Montecito, so I would come to the meetings and tell him what was going on in the community, and he'd tell me, Claudia, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it, because I tell him, like, I have some young gang members, which is also an ongoing issue, but they're mostly younger guys, which are not intimidating at all, but they like to, mess with people's property and whatnot, but Pedrosa would always be like, where do they live? I'll go talk to them, don't worry about it. So I would just like a bit more of that with more of the LAPD, the patrol, because again, there's youngsters that are causing more crime and just would want some prevention, and for the new chief also to be more accessible for the community. I really like Hollenbeck Police Station because I go there and I talk to Danny and also Joel as well, and they're all just very personable and very community oriented, so that's also an important thing, I think, for the next chief to come in.
Good, thank you.
The next speaker, Michael Alexander.
Michael, welcome. You look like Jerry Brown.
And I was very grateful to see that you were wearing jeans, so I don't feel, considering the neckties around the room. I'm a native of Los Angeles. I grew up 2.5 blocks from the Wilshire station in a house that I sold after my parents died in the last decade, so I've lived all of my life in Los Angeles. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Among the questions that you're addressing are two that are important to me. One is the issue of communication, and I think that the next police chief is certainly going to be the face and the voice of the department, and in many ways reflective of the city as a whole. And I hope that you will choose a good communicator who will also stand for what I think in the last week has obviously become a very, very important issue. A police chief who will be opposed to the sale and private ownership of semi-automatic weapons, the manufacture and sale of cop-killing, armor-piercing bullets, and the private ownership of so many types of weapons that have led to the kinds of massacres that we just saw in Florida recently. And I think that having a leader who speaks to the issues from a policing perspective is very, very important in helping our fellow citizenry understand the distinctions of sports guns and others that I won't have in my house, but some people may feel a need for, and the kinds that have been so destructive at the rate of practically 2 a week since the beginning of the year. I was very impressed when I had a chance to speak to Police Chief Bratton shortly after he came to Los Angeles. I just retired as the executive director of Grand Performances, which does free concerts in downtown Los Angeles. I spent 12 years as the State Assembly's appointee to the California Arts Council, and today sit on the board of the Californians for the Arts. I was very impressed that a former member of the California
It's okay.
Highway Patrol is now in the state legislature and has spoken very highly of how the arts can do a role in crime abatement, can deal with various and sundry other needs in the community. And so I would urge you to look for a police chief who understands the wealth of nonprofit, community-oriented organizations and how they can be partners in making this a healthy community. That there are times when interventions can take place that don't require the full involvement of the criminal justice system, but sometimes helping young people, helping old people discover themselves and discover how they can use their energies in various positive ways by having a police chief who does understand that this city is rich in nonprofits. They're underfunded for the most part because this is not a philanthropically generous city by comparison to many others, but it is still full of passionate community leaders who use nonprofits to address community concerns and can be a valuable partner to a police chief who's willing to work with them. Thank you.
Good. Very, very helpful. Thank you, sir.
Lou Calanche.
Welcome, Lou. Take your time.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm battling a cold. Thank you for coming to Montecito Heights. I actually am more involved with law enforcement in Boyle Heights because I run a nonprofit called Legacy LA in Boyle Heights. But I actually live a couple of blocks away from here, so it was nice to come as a resident, but also representing the interests of young people in our city. I think that the reason I wanted to come was I think that we have a great opportunity today in the selection of a chief and can go through a thoughtful process because I believe, having have worked in the city for a really long time, we've always selected a chief to respond to some crisis, I think, in LAPD. And I think that today I've seen a lot of really good policing work happening, especially at the upper levels of LAPD. So I've seen the change over the last decade. So I think that we have an opportunity to think about what we want for the future of LAPD. And I think that the community, and especially young people, want to have relationships. And as a gentleman before me said, there's a lot of us out there doing day-to-day work in the community, and we need to be partners with LAPD. And I have a magnificent partnership with Chief Arcos, who's here. I just saw him here. Didn't recognize him out of uniform. But we have a great partnership where he had the vision and foresight to say, like, here's something that you guys are doing well in the community. Let's support it.
That guy's getting too close. We can have some officers remove him.
Okay. Paparazzi.
I'm kidding you. I thought it was either First Amendment or a relative.
Is he with you? So I think that we have an opportunity to, and I'm glad that you guys are doing this because I think that we need to think about the future and how we want law enforcement and police officers, especially as they graduate from the academy. And it's really interesting for me to see the young people I work with that are like, 20 years old or 22, 23, and they're dealing with officers that are their same age, right? So that's really interesting. So I think that there's an opportunity to bring in the community into how officers are trained. But I would love to see a chief, like Chief Arcos, that has a vision, so I hope he applies, that has a vision for how we want to be seen in the community and what role we want to have in the community and how to leverage partnerships in the community versus seeing themselves as coming in to fix a problem in the community. So I think that we are at a great place to be able to develop that vision for the future of LAPD. And as we know what LAPD does and becomes a model for the rest of the country. So thank you for coming out here. And
Thank you.
I get to come as a resident, so it's really awesome. Thank
Good
you.
job.
Thank you.
We have no other cards, sir.
Again, I'd like to encourage anyone else who came, if they'd like to say anything, Come on, there you go. Came all this way, might as well, right?
Right here, okay? Hi, my name's Jasmine Barnes. I work with Peace Over Violence in Los Angeles.
Good.
We're a local rape crisis center out in Los Angeles County as well as the West San Gabriel Valley. And we work with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault as well as child abuse through intervention, prevention, legal, and emergency services. So we did have a pretty long-standing relationship with Chief Charlie Beck through several divisions of LAPD as well as several divisions, in several police departments. But we encourage that we have strengthened relationships because we do also have our domestic abuse response teams that work closely with different divisions. As for example, we work with Hollenbeck and Central and Hollywood and Northeast, where we have advocates stationed in the stations to work with police officers to help fill out restraining orders or to help fill out whatever that may be with walk-in survivors. So we are hoping to encourage a new chief that is sensitive to survivors of these kinds of crimes and encourages their force to maintain relationships with advocates to help build that unity as well as getting a beneficial relationship on both sides. We are looking for someone who's persistent in working sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse cases to the fullest extent with a trauma-informed response. And lastly, we are hoping we will have assistance with the new LA Metro Off Limits project, which is something that we have just kicked off, I think, last year, to end sexual assault and sexual harassment on public transportation. I know that the HOPE team is working closely with us as well, but we also have a standing memorandum of understanding with Chief Beck as well as our different DART stations that I think would be really beneficial, especially to such a sensitive topic, and that if we could really get a trauma-informed response and maintain that as well as build relationships to encourage survivors to be able to report and speak out and be approached in the proper manner. And that's my time, but thank you.
You can go. Are you finished? Okay, good. Good job. Thank you. Anyone else? You sure? Yeah, come up, sir. Take your time.
Thank you for letting me speak here. My name is Luis Aguilar. I'm a local community member and live down the street. And what I'm looking for in a chief is a bilingual chief, someone that's a good person, not just a good chief. That's
Talk a
worried
little
about
slower. I'm a slow writer.
All right,
I'm writing
sorry,
this
I'm
down.
hearing lots too. So, all right.
Wait, you said a good person.
Yeah, not just a good chief, but a good person as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Bilingual and believes in constitutional policing. And if you can make it more public, I guess the resources available to the public that are already out there that are in existence, just make it more easily accessible. And a chief that's worried about his troop morale. Sometimes it seems like we don't know what's going on or what the morale is with the officers. And I guess that's basically it. And someone that's just engaged in the community.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. Helpful. Anyone else? Come on up, sir.
Hi, my name is James Paularana. I live here in Montecito Heights. I'm on the neighborhood council here. And just piggybacking on what he said about just kind of being open and having a good line of communication with the community. We have meetings here. They're pretty sparsely attended by the community. And I think we have a good relationship with the police, and they'll come and they report out at a lot of these local issues committees. And there's over 60 neighborhood councils, so there's a lot going on in the city, which is huge. But I think if people are more accustomed to interacting with the police at these meetings, just kind of talking to them, they'll be more active as far as talking to them when they need them, or just kind of reaching out, telling them things that are going on. So just kind of really promoting the communication, which I'm seeing a lot from the LAPD as far as online, and getting their information out to the community, just kind of making that relationship seem more of a real two-way street where people will be more open to kind of being involved and just talking to the community. So that's pretty much it. Just kind of a great communicator, someone who really values communication and kind of pushes that down. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone want to come back and add to what they said before or subtract from what they said before? Okay, so we'll hang around for a couple of minutes if anybody wants to come and talk to us privately, whether on or off the record. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming.